the art director at the Erotic Heritage Museum for almost 4 years. 5 years. Almost 5. You've been there for 5 years. She went to art school in Chicago. She's actually an incredible painter. She specialized in oil painting. But while going to art school, she was actually a professional dominatrix in a dungeon in Chicago. Okay? So, she's no longer a professional dom, because actually in Nevada it is illegal. But she can tell you about what she did when she was younger. So, I'll let her tell you her story, and I want you guys to ask questions. She's very blunt and very open about who she is and what she does. So, don't be afraid. That's what she's here for, and she likes this. This is fun for us. So, Dorian, take the floor. Yay, Dorian!
Yeah, it's true what she said. I'm probably one of the nicer of anybody who's done pro dom and he's going to come talk. I'm not going to yell and scream at you. I won't make that guarantee, but I'm going to say I'm not going to. Something that after I came and spoke to her first class, I'm going to give you all a code word, even though I may not respond to it. So in kink, in BDSM and all of that, there's common code words. I'm sure you've heard them in some films or other things. We use the standard stoplight system with BDSM. So it means that the play is becoming to be too intense. You say yellow, the same way on a yellow light. You don't speed up, it means slow down. And then if you say red, it means stop. That's immediately. That means that if you've got something in your hand and you're about to hit somebody and they say red, you throw it. You don't want to hit that person because that means that you are, well, one, it would be non-consensual, which is very important to have consent with all of this. You don't have to go through that.
I'm going to do it.
Thank you. After I first came and spoke to her classes, she decided to give the students this system of code words.
Safe word is also what this is known as. You've heard of a safe word, right?
Yes.
Right. Some people call it like cantaloupe or some random word you usually yell out during sex.
Chinchilla.
Lactose.
So if it's too much, yell red. I can't guarantee I'm going to stop today because I've been given permission to break those rules. But it's mainly I get too descriptive. There's some really disgusting stuff when it comes down to it. Not trying to be negative saying it's disgusting, but it can be pretty gross. So if I'm being too descriptive, if I'm giving too many details, just say red and I'll stop, even though I'm sure lots of other people want me to continue. We'll decide from there on who it is that calls red. So I did do this while I was in Chicago for 3 years, while I was receiving my bachelor's in fine arts from the American Academy of Art in downtown Chicago. It seemed like something fun to do as a student. I just had to show up after class. You have set hours, you're not paid by the hour, you're only paid when you're doing a session. So it was a place where I could go, I could hang out, I could do my homework, and then if I had a session come in, that's just even better. So we had a local paper called The Reader in Chicago. And this has just always been an interest of mine. I can recall as early back as, 14 and 15 where I was starting to do some of this stuff and wasn't even aware. It was just natural for me. It's like, oh, let's handcuff guys to this and make them masturbate. Didn't know what I was doing. Didn't know it would lead to a career, which, again, I don't do it now because in Nevada, actually, fettering and flogging is amounts to prostitution. So it means if I were to hit somebody or tie them up in exchange for money, I will get charged with the same thing that any prostitute or escort is charged for, even if it's fully clothed and there's no sexual contact per se, genital contact or anything like that. So I steer clear of that. I don't want that on my record. It's something I'm very proud of, even though I've been doing all this. There's never been sex involved. That's usually the next question is, have you had sex with people? No. But we'll get more into that. So I picked up this paper. I called them up. I said, I think I'm interested. They do training at these places. So it's the same way strip clubs have house fees. I don't know if you're familiar with the way the strip clubs work. The girls show up, they pay a fee to be there, and then they get to collect all their money. Well, I didn't have to pay to be there, but a portion of what I was making was going back to the dungeon. So they do training there too, which is horrible. Most of the places, they don't really train you. You're kind of thrown in, and they see who sinks or who floats. It's kind of we'll just hang out and learn. So if people don't like you, which the headmistress at this space did not like me very much, so I had to latch on to some other friends and, would learn with them. She didn't want to train me. And that was just her personal judgment from the day that I walked in there. So most dungeons, professional dungeons, will have a headmistress. It's not that one woman really even runs the place or has much say over it. She actually had a husband that was behind her that was running the dungeon, but she was the face of the dungeon. That's something that people are looking for. They want to, they would come in and I want to see the headmistress. It becomes this, to work up to see the headmistress was kind of a deal for some of the guys because it meant that she was in power. So from there we'll go to BDSM.
Will you tell them what that stands for? Because what is the word here that day? The pen.
So, we will take away choking for a minute.
You kinky
I'm
boys.
sad. Choking is all gone. Okay. So B, D, S, M. Anybody have any clue what any of those might stand for? Other than cameraman? You can break it down into those categories. So yes, bondage is one of them. It can also stand for bondage and domination, but typically BD is bondage. DS, any guesses on DS? Dominance and submission. And then S and M, sadomasochism. So does anybody know which one is which? A sadist is somebody who enjoys inflicting pain. Yes, they get pleasure out of inflicting pain, and that actually, a true sadist, they probably want to adhere to the code words in play. A true sadist loves somebody in pain. They actually want to see them in pain. They love inflicting pain, so that's how they get off. So if they're in it, which we'll talk about headspace, they may not stop if they're an actual sadist. Masochist is one who enjoys pain being inflicted on them. So same thing there. If it's somebody who's so into it, they may not realize the harm they're doing to their body at the time, which is why communication is very important, and that's what we're going to stress. The same with any sexual situation. With BDSM, you have to have very strong communication, because you're going into these realms where, it may look cute and furry, but if it starts to hurt, or maybe even trigger something, mentally, maybe something happened to them and they had a bad experience with something, maybe not even sexually related, but when you're doing something to them, it may make them remember that, and they may freak out. So it's really important to have communication between the two partners as to what's taking place. Asking ahead of time, even in a professional situation. So as a pro-dom, they come in, kind of walk you through the way it happened. First they make a phone call, they call the dungeon, we screen all of our clients, so they have to become a member. So if they're not a member, they're to call an hour prior to their actual session. They were called sessions. And they would confirm the address, so they'd find out where we were located. The second they're through the door, all the clothes are off. So if the guy's not comfortable, or the girl, we do have female clients too, if they're not comfortable taking their clothes off, we're not seeing them. Now part of this was actually to prove if they're a police officer or not. For the longest time, they would have them get naked immediately before any exchange of money or anything else, because technically somebody undercover was not allowed to remove their clothing. I heard that those rules had changed, and there were some dungeons where they would actually make them disrobe and then handcuff them through the first part, because apparently getting naked was then okay, but actually being handcuffed was something that they wouldn't allow. So that was kind of protection. Even though what we were doing, most of it technically in Chicago was legal. We even got busted one time. That was fun. They were checking for our business license. They came in to inspect a business license. It was hilarious when they came in, because it was just for the business license. They marched in and said, "What you girls are doing here is fine." And they picked up the blowtorch. We have a blowtorch, like a propane torch to light candles, but he picked that up right away and was like, "I don't want to see what you guys use this for, ha ha ha." So light the candles, dick. So, even, I wasn't afraid doing it in Chicago at all. I felt safe. It was a safe environment. I didn't feel like I was going to get arrested for anything, because I was not crossing those lines. Were other girls at the space crossing the lines? Yes, but some people do anything for money. They're into that. They're not worried about the legal ramifications, so whatever. But that was not me. So, BDSM. There are lots of stuff. BDSM covers a whole spectrum of kink, basically, like she was saying. Anything kink, kind of out of the norm. It also includes fetishes. There are a lot of clients that come in with fetishes. They may not be into necessarily any of the bondage aspect or the S&M aspect, and some of them not even necessarily the dominance and submission, except for the fact that they're allowing the person to take part and kind of control that fantasy for them. But fetishes are kind of like fixations is the best way. So to actually have a fetish, you're actually fixated on something. So you need that item to either be fantasizing about it, to actually have it in your presence in order to achieve sexual gratification. So feet is common in terms of body parts. These fetish objects can be any part of the body. Belly button, I had a belly button fetish client. That was about the grossest thing I ever did. We'll go into that. Yeah, no, it was gross. And there's objects too. So it could be boots, maybe not just feet, it's the boots on the feet. Maybe it's something completely, it could be this coffee cup. That's the fun thing about BDSM and fetishes. Pretty much anything you see in the world, trash on the ground, any object, anywhere, I guarantee you there is somebody out there somewhere that is getting off to that object body part, whatever it is. I learned this through 3 years at the dungeon. I never actually was shocked by anything. After working the first year there, you realize that everybody's in anything. So, I'll see where we're gonna go so we're not going to track here. So BDSM, it's a lifestyle choice or role play between two consenting adults. This is all consensual, and that's what's really important, because people see this stuff, they get scared. It's all about inflicting pain, or you like pain, or this or that. No, it's about sensation, and that's, like she said, a lot of what I do. I'm a very sensual dom, so I'm not all about getting in there and doing what's called corporal. I can do corporal, but corporal punishment is you walk in and you want the shit beaten out of you. So you just want it, all of it given right to you. Not my preferred method, but if I know somebody's into it, I can do that. Which also is hard. So let's go to kicking and punching, for example. I see there was one person that said they fantasized or taken part, whatever. I had one client come in. He literally wanted me to just kick and punch the shit out of him for an hour. He was yay high, bodybuilder. I had never done that before. So that's something as a pro dom too. You have everything coming in. It's not like it's a personal fetish of mine. It's not like, oh, well, I like doing foot this and that, so I'm only going to see foot clients. You're not going to do so well. You need to be open to it. For me, it was a learning experience. So I loved when they came in. So when I had somebody come in for kicking and punching, it was kind of like, oh my God, I'm not really a violent person, not really trained in punching and kicking, but I'll use my common sense and we'll go with this. So he turned out he loved the session. I'd actually quit the dungeon shortly after that. He called on a weekly basis requesting me for months down the road. My friends told me he continued to call. So I'm glad that I gave him that great of an experience. But yeah, he just wanted me to beat the shit out of him. Part of it involved, we have this leather sling, which actually we'll see a picture. The dungeon is still functioning in Chicago. We can look at the pictures. And I'd actually, the unsafest part of the whole session was I was really into it and he's really enjoying it, and I pushed him straight back onto this sling, and these chains flipped up and the chains totally like whacked him. So these chains went, and I'm sure he was bruised from it. But he loved it. It was one of those moments of, oh my God, she really almost broke me. So I'm glad he enjoyed that. But again, difficult for me. Going into it, I was really, punching is a serious thing. It was one of those, I went softly until I felt that I knew what he could take, because that's really important. And so, lifestyle versus pro. In a lifestyle situation, it could be your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your significant other, your other significant other. You probably have good communication, but it's a complete stranger coming in off the streets. I don't know that person. I know nothing about him. I don't know anything about his past. So you have to kind of be very careful in judging how you're playing with them. The same way in any other relationship, you would start slowly, but it wasn't guaranteed that I would see any of these people ever again. So we would take notes so that I knew if, John number 786 came back in, that, he would want this or that. Any questions so far?
Tell them how old you were when you started.
I was 20 years old when I started. I was a pro dom from 20 to 23, roughly, 24. I took some time off in between there, but it was 3 years that I actually worked. The laws were, clients had to be 21 or over to come see me at the dungeon, but I was only 20. They tried not to hire girls any younger than 19, obviously 18 being the legal age, but because it's a lot. I wouldn't recommend any other 20-year-old to go out there and say, I'm going to be a pro dom, because you just don't even know what you are looking right into these people's, they're opening up, and you're seeing the darkest side of them that they don't even want their wives to know. Most of these men are married, so they come in, they have families. The reason they go to a professional is because, one, they may have great sex with their wife, but they're afraid to tell her that they want chained up and treated like a puppy dog and fucked in the ass. Maybe that's just something that they don't want to open up. They're afraid that their wife will leave them, take their kids. It remains a strictly professional situation. So it's, here's your money, you're going to keep your mouth shut, I'm going to get what I want, nobody else is going to know. So that's really the main reason. And yes, most people do have partners. Humiliation is a big factor in a lot of the scenes and role plays. So again, back to this, almost all of them are role plays. So anybody think of some common bedroom role plays you might do? Any games you might want to play?
Wrestling. I like wrestling.
Role plays, wrestling. Wrestling is actually really common. The wrestling sessions cost quite a bit more because you have to physically exert yourself. There was one client that would come in and he would see you usually 1 to 3 times before he would actually do the wrestling. So you're getting paid. The session rate was, we would receive $75. The house got $100. The men would usually tip. So it was about $100 for the hour. The wrestling fees were quite a bit more. But But he would come in and pay to sit and talk. He wanted to talk to the women to make sure that he was okay with moving forward, that there was a connection with the wrestling. So that was always fun because a lot of you'd get paid to sit there and talk. It's, here's your money, let's talk for an hour about what I'm into and see if we're compatible. So there's wrestling, but any other role plays? Can you think of 2 people that you may want to, like doctor and nurse or patient?
My friend said you did a Mr. and Mrs. Claus.
Yeah, see, there's a good
Mr.
one.
and Mrs. Claus.
That's great.
Inmate in prison guard.
Any other role plays that you
Inmate
can
prison guard.
Inmate prison guard. We need better imaginations.
Fireman.
Fireman, there you go. Maybe I was gonna say fireman and burn victim, that's horrible. I mean rescuing somebody out of fire, not yet a burn victim.
Police officer, speeder.
Yep, that's a good one. So, some of the most common ones, I already said doctor and patient, and or nurse.
Teacher student.
Yep, teacher student, there you go, that's also one of the really common ones, because they come in and it's teach me, it's this power position. Because I mean, ultimately, what are you paying her to do?
I'm topping all of y'all.
If you want to look at it that way, which she's pointed out in previous classes, which I love, is she's kind of your dom. You are paying a sum of money for her to tell you what to do,
And you sit here,
and for you to do it, or if not, you get punished, not physically, but through the grading system.
you know what your expectations are, and if you don't do them, what your punishments will be. And you sit here and you listen to me, and you do what I tell you. It's wonderful, right? I like it. It works for me. Does it work for you? Is it good for you? It's good for me.
So yeah, student teacher, really common. People coming in and wanting to do, now so there actually is age role play. Again, these are where areas start to get uncomfortable for some people, but infantilism or infantilism, however you want to pronounce it. Adult babies. Has anyone heard or seen any of that before?
Yes.
Unfortunately. So I'm changing the names from now on. I can't be using names that I've been using. So we're going to call all of them John. We're just going to distinguish which John by the activity. So I never really did full out infantilism scenes. There was Diaper John. We're going to call him Diaper John. He called and booked a session one day. He wanted to see me. I did not want to see him. Although there was a lot of money, I did not like the idea of changing a grown man's diaper. Now granted, we had medical gloves that came all the way up. We had masks and everything. It was a large sum of money. So it was one of those, I don't want to, but the owner was there. So the owner took the call and said, yeah, you're going to see him. And I went, son of a bitch, because it means money for him. Well, he left. Thank God he left, because Diaper John was an hour late for his session. That was one of the rules of the dungeon, whereas if you are not on time, you will not be seen. It's part of the, punishment and reward system. If you don't do as I say, then you get nothing, even though it means money being lost for the dungeon and for the mistress, top, dom. We haven't really gone over those terms quite yet, but we'll get back to that. So he showed up. He threw a temper tantrum outside the door, stomped up and down, said, but I'm here. And I said, well, it's too bad. But I have my diaper on! Well, that's too bad, Diaper John. You should have been on time. But I already made a boom boom! That's disgusting. You're going to have to go change your own diaper. So then he broke out and went from like, I made a boom boom to, I'm not kidding, I shit myself. Somebody needs to change me. Too bad. You were not on time. Make another session, shit yourself again, be there on time.
It's a grown man, right?
Yeah, grown man. They still sell diapers, so. I loved that. I loved being able to send him away because he was late. Because like I said, I wasn't really up for that, but money's money, right? We all have our limits. Unless there's enough dollar signs attached to them. So yeah, there's one example. And that spans all over, from playing literally student and teacher. Sometimes it's college students, sometimes they want, it goes both ways. So at the dungeon, there are the dominant individuals. That's hence the term dominatrix. They're called doms. Mistress is used quite common, which in the professional world is okay, but in the lifestyle world, it's kind of frowned upon. So that's something I had to do when I moved to Vegas and I started working with some of the BDSM communities out here, is I had to make clear why I was a pro-dom, because they kind of get treated like whores within the lifestyle communities. There is lifestyle, so it's oh, well, we love each other, so what we're doing is loving and we care for each other. You're just accepting money for it, so you're the same thing that a prostitute is. No, let me break that down. BDSM is like a sport to me. So we have a lot of sports players in here. Yeah. Raise your hands, most of you, yeah. So, think of it this way. You enjoy sports for what reasons? Why do you like to play football, basketball, whatever it is you're doing?
Stress relief.
Stress relief, competitive, physical activity. Is it mentally stimulating? Yeah. All the reasons I enjoy BDSM.
You get money for it?
Yeah, I have to get money for it. See, you guys are all, you're all pros out there. That is why I do it. The same way that you like to pick up a football and throw it, I like to pick up one of these and play with them. It's physically stimulating, it's mentally stimulating, it's competitive, it's a challenge for myself. How can I read this person? Can I really give them what they're looking for and I'm still able to get enjoyment out of this? It's not sexual for me. I have started to cross some lines and explore sexually, but for me it's a hobby, it's a sport, it's something to do to entertain myself, and there's nothing like being let into somebody's world. Here's a person who maybe has never shown anybody what you're about to see, and you get to be there to witness it. Some crazy stuff. So the term mistress usually refers to the other woman. So in the lifestyle scene, they don't appreciate that because it's not the other woman. If you are the top, if you're the dominant character, you need to be the woman. So why would you be the mistress? You're not the other woman. But we use that term a lot in the pro world. I went by, my actual name was Lady Dorian, which frustrated me a little. The owner of the space picked it out because there was nobody else using the phrase, the term lady to refer to themselves. But I was like, I'm not a lady. Like that does not work. So I use mistress a lot. That's how in the session you maintain your dominance. You're giving them what to call you. So it's, you will call me Mistress Dorian. You will always address me that way. When I ask you a question, you are to address, thank you, Mistress Dorian, whatever. But then that's how you can play with them within the role play. You start switching it up. You'll no longer call me this, you're going to call me this now. So then when they screw up and they're already like in their little space, you can just beat them harder. No, that's not what I told you to just call me. What did I just tell you? Mistress Dorian. No, I did not tell you, mistress. What did I just tell you? So there's lots of ways psychologically to continue the play going, because you can imagine a full hour with a stranger, like, sometimes you just go, how long do I have to be doing this? So yeah, and there's also a master, so there's the dominant roles within the professional space. There's multiple mistresses, or doms. There's usually a male available, so the master, in this case he was the owner of the dungeon. He openly also did submissive sessions. He was a cross-dresser and would occasionally, very rarely do that, but he was usually a top. We did have girls that would do switch sessions. We only, I think one time when I was there, I had an actual submissive girl that only did submissive work, but there were switches. So these were women that would not only be the dom, but if a guy would pay more money, they would be the bottom, and they would allow the man to, the male clients. There was actually, while I was there, not one female client come and get a submissive female or male. And so they got to do all that stuff. Of course, there's limitations with that. The girls still had more than the upper hand in the situation to prevent anything from going wrong. I never wanted to do that. That's something I wasn't interested in. Why would I let some complete stranger beat on me or tie me up? That just didn't make sense. And luckily, in the entire time I was there was only one negative incident, and it was a girl that was doing a submissive session. She had told him no penetration, but when she was all tied up, he took a dildo and put it in her. So luckily it wasn't himself, it was just a toy, but that happened, and that's exactly why I wouldn't take that risk. Any dollar amount on it, I'm not going to let a stranger tie me up like that. Unless I met him on the internet. Anyway, any other questions to this point? You can just start throwing them out there because I will answer anything you might have.
Was there mostly males or was there like pretty even?
Mostly men. It was mainly male clients. We had a couple of couples that would come in. Some of the couples, you would wonder if it's just another sex worker that this guy would purchase to bring in with him to pay her. You got that vibe sometimes, that wait a second, they don't really know each other, but whatever, as long as she's okay with it. But we did have couples. There were also a few female clients. The female clients, the headmistress saw one of them. The master saw one of them. They would come in on a pretty regular basis. One of them, so this falls under humiliation, one of them was a rather large woman, and her humiliation was she wanted to be made fun of for being fat, obese. So she would come in and she would call her a piggy, she would make her get on the scale and make fun of her that she hadn't lost weight since the last time that she'd been there. Again, all really, really tough stuff to deal with psychologically. You have to be strong on either end of this to be able to do it. And a lot of people who came to work at the dungeon who hadn't done anything prior weren't there very long because they realized, oops, this isn't like, stripper with whip is a term that we gave to those girls a lot. There's a lot of them were strippers. They'd be PEs, personal entertainers out of the strip clubs, and they'd go, oh, you know how much money the doms are making? That's it. And they'd go there, and then all they would think is about looking pretty. Clients at the dungeon, some of them didn't even care. Obviously, some of them have their I want blue eyes, or I want an Asian girl, or I want, specifics. But some of them didn't care. You could do the session in your pajamas because you may be blindfolding them. They may not be seeing you the entire time. So it doesn't matter what you look like. It matters usually verbally what you're doing, physically what you're doing. They don't care. So that is a big difference between a lot of the other sex work and this too, is that in a lot of cases it doesn't matter that or, I was at a point, I was heavier when I was doing this. I was about 50, 60 pounds heavier than I am now. The owner of the dungeon kept telling me, put on weight. He's like, you're in this middle range. You're not quite small enough for him. You're not quite big enough for him. Why don't you put on some weight? Which I thought was horrible because I was like, fuck, I'm happy with myself, whatever. But it's true. If I would have put on another 100 pounds, I would have had clients left and right because they were calling all the time going, what's the weight of your largest dom? They like to be smothered, face sitting. Anybody ever heard of those terms? Smothering, face sitting. So that's a common play too. I learned really quick. Duct tape on the mouth. I have underwear on, so a session. Typically, what would I wear for a session? Underwear, corset, bra, boots. Boots are kind of the standard, if not some kind of heels, depending on what the client, who the client is and what they want. So the underwear never came off. Never came off. Stays on. Top never came off. Stays on. That's part of the fun part about being a dom is get your ass naked. I'm keeping my clothes on. Which automatically, that's with the whole power play. That's already putting them in a vulnerable position. So when you're naked, it's all out there. It's there. It's it can be humiliating for some people. So by leaving your clothes on, you're already putting them in that position of I'm clearly more important than you because I got to keep my clothes on. So totally lost my train of thought there again.
Reason you put duct tape on there.
Yeah, reason duct tape because face sitting, people have tongues, right? No matter how much you smack them and tell them not to stick their tongue out, they're going to try to stick their tongue out. Also, there's the bodily fluid issue at that point. That's something that, again, as the dom, I have the upper hand. I can make these decisions. We'll get into some more of that stuff in a little bit. I don't think we're quite ready to talk about that right now. But duct tape over the mouth. Now, okay, there's suffocation risk, right? Well, I make sure they're breathing through their nose and whatnot. But I wouldn't do face sitting that often. It had to be a client that I felt comfortable with and duct tape over the mouth. Trampling is also common, so that means actually walking on them, which is something I was also not comfortable with. I was weighing about 230 pounds, 220 pounds when I was doing this. It's a lot of weight. Guys will specifically want you to stand on their face, both feet right on the face, with heels on their body.
Whole weight.
All your weight. We would usually assist each other, so there are multiple dom sessions. They could book and see, two girls or 3 girls, or 2 girls and the master or whatever they wanted. But either way with the trampling, like you have to hold somebody. We would help each other with doing that. Could you imagine a pair of stiletto heels slipping on your nutsack? Like, not cool. Not cool at all. So I would judge those. I'd be very careful. Flat out, if somebody wanted it, I would say, well, would you mind seeing so-and-so instead for this part of the session, or just in general?
I've seen someone get jumped on. I saw a dom literally, she stood on his chest, like right here, and she jumped up and down on top of him with all of her weight. And he's like, but he liked it.
Have you ever had any celebrities come in? Tiger Woods?
Somewhat. Not major celebrities. Well, then we discussed that. We discussed sex with clients, right? It was typically men. What occupations do you think that these individuals have?
Lawyers.
Bankers, lawyers, bankers.
CPAs.
CEOs.
Important people in power, right?
Yes,
Right? They wanna be able to hand it over and say, I'm an important person, I do this. You take the ropes.
Have you ever had any NFL football players?
Possibly. I'm not that familiar with the NFL,
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah. But I would see familiar faces all the time, and I wouldn't, that's somewhere you don't go. You just don't even, you turn it off. You're there to do whatever.
What type of sessions do you make the most?
Foot fetish, it sounds silly, but I don't really like my feet being touched. I'm very ticklish. I also have gross toenails. Have you heard about that? I had a toenail removed and it grew back really funky, and then the other one recently fell off. So to me, like, my feet are eh. Now this is the crazy part though, because a foot fetish session, right? They're all over the place. I had one guy pay me $100 for 10 minutes to put on a pair of little white bobby socks, sit flat on the floor and let him lay down in front of me and smell my feet from this far away, wearing those white, right out of the package, brand new white bobby socks, $100, 10 minutes. That's okay, because he's not touching them. There are guys that want you to wear nylons specifically. They like the way the nylons are on the feet. They want to pay you to massage your feet. So it sounds crazy, right? I'm like, no, don't do it. $100 for an hour foot massage. Oh, no, I can't. I didn't want that. When they touch my feet, and then there are people that want to suck on them and kiss them, I would allow it because, again, $100, whatever, it's just my feet, but ew. So that goes back to the belly button fetish. There was only one guy that came in with belly button fetish. Now, this would be body worship. This would, fall under fetish. It's a part of the body. He wanted, and I don't expose my stomach. Like, I always had corsets on. So this session that I even had to, remove something. So I had on this little flexible corset thing. So I said, how am I going to do this? Well, for the first half hour, I teased him. I kept my clothes on and just kept, showing him my belly button. A lot of, I bet you want to see my belly button, don't you? I bet you want to know how deep it is. Like a whole half hour of drawing it out, and then